Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad y'all able to join us tonight. For everyone that's new to the channel, thank you for being here. And uh, what happened is, of course, I'll have just a short presentation, and we'll be discussing anything and everything that you wish to discuss. But after the presentation, if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer them. In chat, as always, respect the families, respect mods, and respect each other. And we'll have a wonderful conversation tonight because, as always, with the Morning Watch people, we start off with true crime, but somewhere along the way, we'll get into the Waffle House menu. and speaking of Waffle House, Dave, if you're out there, I took Mrs. Steve out tonight, and we went out to our local Waffle House, and I obtained me a Waffle House cup. So now, from here on out, whenever I have coffee after tonight, I'll have my Waffle House cup and be able to partake from what I normally did while I was on patrol in these early morning watch hours. But we're going to look at, of course, let's see if I can get this pulled up there. The Delphi case, of course, with Libby and Abby. If you have any information on this case, absolutely make sure you notify law enforcement so that they'll be able to take that information and apply it to the case that they have regarding Richard Allen. And as far as anything new with this case right now, of course, looking at the current status of the county having to see if they can allot, and they're requesting additional $2.1 million for the anticipated cost of this trial, which is going to be huge for the that county. The budget, at $17.5 million, that was just allotted right before his arrest, and now they're throwing on another 2.1, which is probably around 12 or 13% more or of the original budget that they're having to allot towards this trial, which is a huge cost, but it's for justice, and it would be something that will absolutely have to be done. And then on the other part of the that we're going to be discussing tonight, of course, we have the case of Stephen Smith. And regarding Stephen Smith's case, I want to thank everyone that's been sending me all the crime scene photos, especially of where his body was located. I've started looking at some of the blood pattern analysis and that crime scene. And I found some very interesting information that I've got to test today later on. Once it gets daylight in about 8 hours. But I'll start processing and doing some testing that is very interesting. I noticed about the crime scene, and will almost definitely show that he was placed at the scene. If my testing works out, which I believe it will. It was just some details about it that didn't make sense. And hopefully on tonight's show at 8, I'll have all that. Like I said, I just want to thank everybody that sent me those photos. And I've only started looking at the actual crime scene photos tonight and about an hour ago. And while looking at some of those, of course, the body was moved at the scene during the photography. You got legs going one way and then they're going the other way, and which is very interesting for whoever was doing the photography and the processing. And I understand that there will be certain movement at the crime scene um, by investigators getting access to different pockets and things to try to identify a victim. And but it also creates certain confusion for people looking at it that may not realize what's going on by the investigators and for what purposes. But before we get into all the questions and stuff, let's go into chat here. Hello, Jill. Good to see you. Dog Defender. Good to see you. Let's see who else here. Grace is here. Copper Horse. Good to see you. All right. There's Dave. He's at a Waffle House now. Good to see that. Uh-oh. Let's see. It jumped on me. Okay. Goodness, we got a bunch of people in chat tonight. Southern Gal, True Crime, always great to have you here. Jennifer, great to have you also. Monster Mash. Let's see. Kowalski. Miranda Lee. Let's see. Get me to go down through here. Don't want to get too far behind it. Don't take a few minutes for you to get behind here. Debbie, good evening. Great to see you. Triple S. But yeah, the blood pattern analysis, most everything, of course, you can see in the roadway what the passive blood flow and as it, flow pattern across the pavement. And it was interesting. And then we have to take note that the mother in her letter to the FBI noted that there wasn't blood spatter, which is a part of blood pattern analysis, that if there's any type of injuries that has certain blood flow patterns, that after the first blow that creates a injury producing blood, every blow after that will create blood spatter that will have different types of blood droplets that can be determined with every strike, that whenever a weapon is used after there is blood flow, that you'll have cast off, you'll have high velocity if it's swung hard enough and it hits the blood source. You'll have medium velocity and low velocity blood spatter. The high velocity blood spatter is usually with some type of firearm to create those really microscopic size misting. But the medium and the low velocity blood spatter can occur anytime a weapon is used, such as a ball bat, a hammer, a tire iron. Any of those will create, or even your hands will create medium and low velocity blood spatter. And the mother noted that she was advised by law enforcement there was no blood spatter that she saw, but there is, of course, a lot of blood loss at the scene, and which is interesting of itself. I've noted, I keep telling people that as I look at these things, I don't know what is first generation and what could be edited, because there is a lot of stuff that where it's pixelated and things. Depends on which crime scene photos you're looking at, but they're all very interesting right now. Josh DePosh caught the intro this time. Thought Mrs. Steve was joining us this late. I guess you'll do, Mr. Steve. No Waffle House menu for me. Oh man, yeah, we occasionally go out at least once a week and visit a Waffle House. But to get us, but the waitress tonight, when we were talking about if they sold them, she was gracious enough to just give me one, and so I have to absolutely give a shout out to Waffle House and their very kind employees and everything that, and because you know whenever you're on patrol and you're working late at nights, of course you have busy times, but um, and then you only have a certain amount of time that you can go in and eat. And Waffle House is one of the most, in this part of the country, that they're at every exit almost on the interstate, and so they're easy access. And so, of course, you just go into Waffle House to get your coffee, and they generally give us coffee. Of course, we always have to pay for our meals, but they'll always give you a fresh cup of coffee. Oh, Miranda Lee, you don't have them in there in Michigan? That's sad. Like I said, we mix crime scenes and Waffle Houses almost every time on the morning watch. Did you buy that cup or permanently borrow it? Like I said, she was very gracious to give it to me, and so I guess it's permanently borrowed. But I think you can go online and order them if you needed one. But I'm gonna get me some other stuff from them also. Uh, Phantasmic Ether. Hope you're having a great night. I am. Good to see you. Appreciate you being here. Boston Christian, single mom. Oh, Nightbot's here. Dang it. I was going to buy you and Mrs. Steve one. I appreciate that, but I have one now. Uh oh. Dandy Linus eating beef tips and gravy over homemade mashed taters. Um, Actually, we after the Waffle House, we went by and we looked at some beef tips and gravy. We eat it over rice. There's Mom from Germany. Lisa, good to see you. Catatonics, Patty Lemons. How are y'all doing this evening? We're doing great. KS, my stomach stopped tolerating Waffle House after I graduated college. All right. Let's see. Uh-oh. Jennifer having some knee issues. Uh-oh. Gets feeling better. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Why do you think a kit was completed on Stephen Smith? Do you think there's DNA as our day that got banned? What happened was is that it's not that you get banned. YouTube has a algorithm that if certain words are used, it deletes it. We didn't ban you. It's YouTube that if certain words are written out, it won't allow them. And because we finally found it, Mrs. Steve went in and checked. And what had happened was that word was used in its full spelling. And YouTube, like I said, they just didn't allow it to be in chat. So sometimes that happens. It's not us, it's not the mods, but it does happen. But for whatever reason, and I have to admit that, and I'm glad that whoever recognized and requested that type of kit to be completed knew at some point the information that it wasn't an accident or a motor vehicle accident, and that had occurred, and knew at some point it would be classified as a homicide. And so whoever ordered that test absolutely did the right thing. Now, those type of kits and tests are often done when you do find someone that is unclothed, nude, or partially clothed, um, due to the fact that they may have been assaulted. So hats off to whoever recognized the importance for the fact that if they hadn't completed that, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that says, "Have you ever heard on a traffic accident one of those being done?" Um, and of course, it's not done on traffic accidents, and so they're absolutely being honest. But the person that was in charge of whoever did that request, they knew that it wasn't a traffic accident, and they knew it was more than likely a homicide. And I don't know if they had the information of his lifestyle and choices of possibilities, um, and if they were just trying to cover the bases. But I'm glad they covered those bases for the fact if they didn't, they'd be raked over the coals for not possibly having that done. And so we don't know what the lab results were from that, but we can assume that there was no DNA. For if there was, and there could have been, I take that back. There could have been, and they've already interviewed whoever that possible DNA was and cleared them. It could have been something that would have been consensual or otherwise. We just don't know. And but like I said, the autopsy will have done some of it because I know they mentioned certain types of swabs they did, and but I'm glad that it was committed or submitted and fulfilled on that order. All right, let's see what else we got in here. Yes, Miranda. So I've got you tonight, but like I said, sometimes it's nothing to do with our mods or Mrs. Steve. It's just the algorithm. Come on, Nars. Love the Waffle House from Mr. Steve. We have them on both sides of the exit. I've seen that. I've seen it. And never have too many. Oh, um, Lane Seawright says, could you talk about the platforms you mentioned in Chris's live stream with regard to the booties, rubber soles? Um, Chris had a great show earlier tonight, and I dropped in about halfway through. But a question, and they were talking to a couple of the officers that was on the scene and a sled agent that was processing the scene. And they were talking about the techniques used for the processing of Paul's uh, body located there at the feed room door, and that it was very wet. And of course, there was blood stains and blood around the area. And when I first started my training for becoming a state certified crime scene tech, um, a lot of the things that exist now did not exist back then. And a lot of the processes have been and have evolved over the years for the better. And that will continue. There will always be certain things realized and things created. But a lot of the times when we arrived at scenes prior to the CSI days of being trained and certified and understanding contamination, cross contamination, and the hazards of destroying evidence, especially on a fresh crime scene where there's still liquids and wet blood, whereas it's easy to track and step on and destroy pre-existing um, evidence prior to law enforcement arriving. For the fact if an offender stepped in that blood pattern or the victim, as we had in this case, you can tell from the blood trail and the shoe prints exactly who that individual is, and you look for shoes that are not on the victim or any of the victims and are originated from some outside source that is not on the scene at the time the law enforcement arrives, because it is a great clue. And as we've seen, even with the Koberger case in Idaho, that footprint was lifted several days after the initial responding officers. And once blood dries, of course, it's hard to, destroy any type of shoe print because blood is, pretty tough once it's dry. But while it's wet, it's not. It's easy to alter those or step on and totally, obliterate any type of chances at identifying that footwear. Well, whereas we may have back years ago simply put a board down and walked on a board to get into certain areas so that we didn't step in anything that we had to, that they've came out with certain platforms that you can put into these types of scenes, and they're just basically little grills that you can throw on the floor, and whatever the contact points, they're just raised beds of a platform so that you can walk in these areas on this and stay on this grid and minimize the impact that your footwear will have on carpet, tile, or any place that there could be the possibility of some type of evidence. And the sled agent, of course, was minimizing of what impact they had on the crime scene, and that's human nature. That this is what of if I had to make a choice of walking in there with a shoe without booties versus one with booties, he was defending the choice of them walking in that type of environment. And certain people do that, and of course, um, each of them, everyone's trained different, and everyone has different expectations of how they want a crime scene processed. And the senior agents make those decisions of where we're going to go, who's going to be there, what are the corridors that we walk in, and you know, analyzing and looking at the movement of the officers in there. I don't know what was done before it was free reign, because uh, a lot of the body cam footage, it's like free reign, that they just walking around freely, not choosing certain paths, because you try to minimize anything, especially at night. It's hard to recognize the areas that are um, of things that might be of interest when you have great lighting. And so it's so easy to destroy evidence, and you have to be very, very careful at night. Miranda Lee, I don't know if you had another question or not, but I got that one about your kit. Um, Bible Group has a question, and I missed it. He said, "Is this true?" Um, uh, don't know. Does anyone know what is this true coffee? Is this true coffee web? Oh, okay, I got you now. Okay, um, I was reading that two different ways. Okay, I got you. Yes, yeah, we're a hybrid. We're a true coffee web. Oh, I thought there was another question. I miss some things. Sometimes it just goes right over my head, guys. Um, yes, I was watching another great channel. The host mud on the bottom of Steven's shoes, which none of it had imprints on the asphalt of the roadway, which was a great observation. And that mud may have been from the law enforcement uh, uh, during their investigation, and some of the notes mentioned um, the what is it, Bobcat boat ramp, which I covered a few nights ago, of where Stephen possibly had been on that boat ramp, which could have been the source of that mud. We'll just have to see. There, and I saw part of this show that you're talking about. I can't think the name of it. If anyone can think the name of this channel, shout them out, because they're law enforcement officers. I think he's over the Cold Case Foundation. I just can't think of his name. And he's worked, I think he said over 300 homicides, which is huge. But yes, anyone that has that of the mods, I don't have a problem. They can shout them out. Uh, but I think the mud more than likely would be, but they'll be able to do analysis and see if that's where the mud in those shoes originated from, and that would be supporting evidence that he was at the Bobcat boat ramp. Um, and hopefully they will follow up on that. Um, the road looks slanted to the right where a car was setting to me. The slant is going to be at whichever way that passive blood flow was. Of course, that's gravity. All liquids are self-leveling, and so they just ran off whichever direction that is. Whenever I get there, I'll be able to mark that and have a little bit better understanding. And I'm going to try to go over there sometime in the next few days to South Carolina. I want to do Chris did a pretty good reenactment of the U-turn, but I want to go to the actual location and see if I can get my vehicle within those parameters that are set up from that roadway to hopefully that paved area still exists at that intersection. I'm looking forward to finding out. Jennifer, some of you are out of control. Yes, they stay out of control here, Jennifer. Okay, good news. Missing Arkansas teenager Tanya Mariupoli was found safe today. Good news. Yeah, everybody can see the saying. They just can't see the other word that is written sometimes. Was there any blood spatter, Mr. Steve? Um, the mother said that law enforcement had indicated to her there was not blood spatter as far as um, anything that I would refer to as blood spatter, the low or medium velocity blood spatter, those size droplets. Of course, you do have um, a passive blood flow, and which is interesting. And there's a lot of passive flow there, which is interesting in and of itself, which made me look at it uh, with a lot of interest. And that's when I saw some things I have to test. And I'm looking forward to doing those tests. It'll probably take me a couple, 3 hours tomorrow to build and try that. And if it's successful, I think it might answer a few things. If it's not successful, it'll answer a few things also. Jennifer Michelle, no thank you to me. FF is here. Bible group says, Steve, good to be here at the True Coffee Well. It ain't far off of it, buddy. You're exactly right. That'd be a great name. Pigeon Matt, good to see you. Yeah, Mrs. Steve, she was so frustrated the other night she couldn't find that question. She was looking. Oh man. And someone I got a notification through my email that popped in, gave a donation. And I think it was I don't know if it was to the foundation or if it was PayPal, but thank you. Either one of them. Thank you. Question: could the weapon used on Stephen be a baseball tee? The bottom is shaped like home plate. Mrs. Steve is awesome, Mr. Steve too. Thank you. Any type of hard surface, whenever it can cause lacerations. It doesn't matter if it's a piece of tile. Doesn't matter if it's the bottom of hard plastic, such as a tee box, a baseball bat, a flashlight. Um, Whenever you use enough energy and you strike the skull, I've seen a lot of people opened up and it looks like almost an incision on the scalp. Because whenever you pinch that skin between a hard surface and the bone, it'll split wide open, and then you can also have the fracturing of the skull. And I know there was in the autopsy report they were talking about both the a 7.5 inch splitting of the skin and also some fractures. Yeah, so permanently borrow mug. You're exactly right, Betsy. Catatonics wants to go get some coffee. Lane, that ironically, most of the crimes I've witnessed have occurred in the Waffle House. And there is a percentage of crimes that do occur. There's a lot of fighting goes on at certain times and on certain days. Um, and you can't, I was talking about the Waffle House index that occurs, that it's hard to close a Waffle House down. Um, I had a guy I worked with that in fair weather with no storms around, he closed one down one time. It took a full can of OC spray, but they had to close it down for a cleaning. Uh, he had one of the greatest statements I ever heard when I got there. He said, "Did you know that Waffle House they have keys for the front door?" Because they never lock the doors. Josh the Posh, they were in their birthday suit, was drunk in the storage employee room. You see a lot of things there. Brandon Lee's hungry now. Lisa, good to see you. Oh, Shay, all your Waffle House is closed. That's terrible. Oh, Ava Hawkshaw, good to see you. Glad you're here. Yes, the algorithm out of control. So much that we have to alter our speech patterns because if you get that yellow stuff and some of our funding, of course, comes from those ads, and every dollar counts. Oh, this is so logical. You can call the R Act indecent assault, although that implies there's a decent assault. I love Triple S. That is that. Oh, that's so logical. Um, and I agree, Caton. I think the police that were originally there knew this wasn't a done case. Uh, yes, as uh, they were first assigning it, well, it's a traffic accident, and then they made the decision, no, it's a homicide. And then SLED shows up and says, well, that's not a, a gunshot wound. But they were uh, told that, and they had enough information that, yes, it's a homicide of some sort. Because here in Georgia, we have vehicular homicide also. But, so they processed it. And then, of course, history is made by the uh, pathologist, and that it turned into a road accident. Yeah, Jeff F. I understand. There's some. I don't know where they're going to go with this stuff that of how you can even talk about in the true crime world. Um, and I mean, we have it posted that it's not for kids, and it's supposed to be for adults. And we try to be as respectful as we can. Miranda, were there signs of an on Stephen Smith? Not that I know of, Miranda, but uh, for whatever reason, they did check that. And I don't know at what point and how long it was from the time that, um, which would have had to be relatively quick, for the fact that while the pathologist did the autopsy, I believe the next day, and then they sent the body straight to the funeral home. And so at some point, someone made a decision, because generally that type of kit is done during the autopsy. Um, and But now, did they transport the body back somewhere or something? Not that I know of, but it's possible. So it had to be someone prior to the body being shipped, I would think, to the funeral home, that type of kit was testing was done. Uh, Kathy says, question, Steve, do you think more tips are coming in now that Alex has been sentenced? I would hope so. And SLED most certainly felt that that would be a possibility. Um, um, and I find that extremely distressing, that any individual can have that much power within a community, and have this self-proclaimed dynasty, and have that much influence, and where people don't have the ability to report a crime. Um, just don't stand for that. Makes no sense. Grace wants some grits. Whatever was happening that night, he must have been so scared, and that is heartbreaking. And I agree with that. It is heartbreaking, and you often see um, um, those final moments. And I would be interested, typically in almost all assaults, at some point, whenever flight's no longer an option and you go into the survival mode of fight. And uh, that's, there's certain parts of the anatomy that we can look at and see how involved a individual is and how they fought. Are fingernails broken? Is there any type of human debris inside the teeth? Because you'll see that sometimes. People will absolutely fight, as they say, tooth and nail, and especially women. Um, I've seen far more people tooth and nail, hair, and bite marks, and scratches and claws from the female uh, being involved in those defensive and survival struggles. And not so much, for whatever reason, males fight more closed fist, whereas females don't. Um, and But doesn't mean that Stephen wouldn't have had a possibility of maybe clawing someone or getting some type of hair. And was it processed, and what can we find on his clothing? But we'll hopefully find out some of that information in the coming days, because now, like I said, SLED is hopefully be able to look at it some more. Jill, good to see you. Sweet Caroline. Hopefully, I'm not too far behind. Oh, yeah, I am way far behind. Oh, goodness. Bear with me, people. I may go past somebody. Group. We don't have any fast food, just a lady who sells frozen burritos out of her trunk. I'm feeling sorry for you, Bible group. Oh, Lane thought it was a platform shoe. A raised surface makes a lot of sense. Yes. Okay. No, you're not goofing off. We're talking about such serious stuff, and in law enforcement, there is dark humor. Everybody likes dark humor in law enforcement for the fact that we see the best of human nature in the worst of times. Of that, most of our victims, the majority of our victims, are the innocent, absolutely never deserved what happened to them. And occasionally we do see justice when we arrive on a scene that someone was able to defend and do the right thing as far as protecting their properties and their persons. And but we do all have dark humor, and of course, um, and I've seen people absolutely jump on officers because they're sitting over there and they may crack a smile or something to break the tension, and not realizing the stress factors that is placed upon these officers day in and day out of how much stress and bad things they see. And some officers handle it well, some officers don't. And the public never handles it well whenever they see an officer smiling. But I can look across a crime scene and see, and you'll hear certain dark humor at times. Um, is it right or wrong? If it relieves the stress and allows them to go along and do their job professionally and cover all the bases, it's just part of the job. Which one was sled agent? Laura Chapman or Green? Laura was a female. I think she was a liaison from one of the sheriff's offices or something that was going to work with the sled agent. Uh, the officer in the middle was a uniform officer that was a supervisor with a body cam, and the one with the beard, I believe, was like all sled agents have beards. Uh, at least that's what it appeared to when they were testifying in court. Um, and that's my understanding of the rank and file that was in that interview tonight on Chris's show. Oh, look at here. Kamala Harris, Norris, not Kamala Harris, Kamala Norris, for your trip to South Carolina. It should get you breakfast and dinner one day at the Waffle House. Thanks, Mrs. Steve, for letting Mr. Steve check out the scene. Absolutely. Thank you for your support. And it will be used for that purpose. I hope they have Waffle Houses over there. I hadn't looked to see where they're at, but I will find them. Hopefully they took samples of the dirt. Absolutely. And hopefully they still have those shoes or the mother has those shoes somewhere. Yes, that's the name of the channel, the interview room. You're correct. Oh, once again, it jumped in and out. Steve, can you explain the process once Ellie found the lost tip in Delphi? If they would have needed a search warrant for gathering more information, yes, they would have. Once they determined that they have identified an individual, now there could have been certain things that they may have done, um, but if they, just like with BTK, they went and obtained certain paperwork to receive or retrieve a DNA profile from one of his daughter's doctors, and they would have probably done the same thing if they couldn't find trash or something from Richard Allen to see if there was a DNA profile that might match what they had. But if it's outside of DNA and they're looking for other evidence, such as they're going to be able to do a traffic stop, seize his vehicle, make an arrest, or detain him, or go to the house and detain him and serve a search warrant um, and obtain further information. So yes, they would have used whatever information they had at the time from and built that probable cause. Using his own words against him that yes, I was the man on the bridge that day, and and as we saw in the probable cause affidavit and the arrest warrant, um, some of the things that they um, were able to put in that affidavit. But yes, because if you go to a house and you arrest someone and you search the residence without a search warrant, it's fruits of a poison tree, and you won't get it into court. Yes, still. I like him. I haven't watched him a lot, um, but he is a very well trained law enforcement officer. He also said the shoes look wet. However, walking through grass at night with wet front and top of shoes from dew. Um, I, if they were wet, there wasn't any. Generally, when you have wet shoes and things, that even if cloth is wet, if you tilt them over to the side, the water will drain down and then they'll go onto the pavement. I haven't looked at those pictures that close as far as the shoes, and I didn't note if there was any uh, 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 wet pavement under the shoes. So I don't know how wet he's talking about. I can't tell as far as how wet they were versus not. The mud appeared to be, or the dirt. Now here in Georgia, when you get the red clay in your shoes and it dries, it's like cement. I don't know so much. I would think that part of the country it's more sandy and clayish than like Georgia red clay. It's not going to be the same. Steve, where did you hear about the boat ramp? It's in one of the reports I read from law enforcement that they sent the troopers back over to the boat ramp, and it's in one of the reports. I'll see if I can't find it again. I read about it last week in some of the information sent me. Yes, Kowalski, there was a long a line of sight. I mean, it was a gentle curve, but and that's another thing at night. Sound carries extremely well at night, and he would have heard a car coming, approaching, or a truck, or otherwise. Hey, Daisy, good to see you. Um, Mr. Steve, what is passive blood flow? It's any time that you have a sustained blood flow and it's fed by gravity. It's not something that is being pumped out of the uh, and is spraying onto another surface, such as arterial spray. It's just another definition of some type of a blood pooling effect that we identify as a passive blood flow. That once it leaves the body, it'll gather in a certain area, and then gravity takes over, and it will flow either down a wall, down as the crime scene I worked up in the woods, down the face of a tree, and even on a road surface. That it'll gather pool, and then it'll go as self-leveling as the road is, whatever grade. Um, it will go down that grade and create that passive blood flow. That would be a coincidence, Stephanie. Wouldn't it be crazy if they found the origin of the blue paint chip in the ditch near Maggie's farm? Yeah. Uh, I don't know where they found whatever they found, but I'm excited. Tammy says, "Is the YouTuber crimes no more?" No, but I like his show also. Uh, he has a great show. There's a lot of great people out there that do some great work, and I appreciate them all. What the bet? Good to see you. Seriously, people fighting over waffles or what? They just fighting over people, uh, whatever intoxicant they have for the night, and you get enough of them together, eventually you'll have two of them, and that one of them has to prove who's the dominant rooster in the Waffle House. Oh, um, John says, please look up Trenton Laircamp, a 19-year-old that was tortured by high school kids. I'll put him down on my list. I hadn't heard about that. Thank you. Kamala Norris, if you're in a fight for your life, fight like it's 3 a.m. at the Waffle House. Absolutely. And Daisy, I understand it doesn't make sense if you're looking at the crime that um, as a traffic accident. Yes, it doesn't make sense. But um, looking at it from the perspective that it was done, I'm looking at it from the appreciation that it was done, regardless of whatever was the order. Without it being done, it would have left open a void and a question. Um, so I'm just glad it was done and completed, regardless if it makes sense or not. We have to be grateful it was done. What was the official reason to change the cause of death to homicide? Um, I don't know what the SLED, whoever the commander, whatever his name was, what was the thing that led him to it. But the 8 years of the mother bringing the attention to everyone she could to the case, plus one of your um, law enforcement agencies that's charged with investigating um, traffic accidents with all their experts, and that uh, all their training is based to recognize traffic accidents, saying this is not a traffic accident. And if it's not a traffic accident and we have someone that has sustained blunt force trauma, then what is it? And, they arguing and we don't have the debris, and the traffic expert says didn't happen here, then therefore we have a scene that has to be uh, of what caused these injuries. And and so at some point, um, especially since after the Murdoch um, uh, jury found him guilty, that the family and the attorneys came together and they brought enough attention to it that hundreds of thousands of dollars has been donated to the family, and now they're going to have a proper investigation of as far as the private autopsy, and they're going to hire some well qualified investigators privately, and whatever information they gather, of course, they'll have to turn over to law enforcement. And SLED said that they would participate in the autopsy and see if there's any new evidence. And so, public opinion, and I give credit to all the YouTubers out there that brought attention to the case. Thank you. All the people that donated and supported this family so that they can hire um, uh, the proper pathologists that will go in there and redo the autopsy and find whatever information to find justice. That's all we can ask for. No, Grumpy Cat, I didn't see where there's someone that uh, 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 defiled a Waffle House in New Orleans. Yeah. Marie, glad you're here. Oh, oh, that's funny. Uh, Fulton County. Your baby brother's a law enforcement officer in Fulton County. I used to train with some of those guys. And yes, until there's some evidence against Buster, yes, there's no need to just throw mud. Oh gosh, y'all are so funny. And absolutely, shout out to the law enforcement in Nashville who took care of the situation. Absolutely, absolutely. That's what you're supposed to do. Go to the gunfire. And Sharon Edwards, you're absolutely correct. The dark humor is a defense mechanism. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Um, Grace, I hope that is the case. I've heard it both ways, and I hope that is the case. There was some notations about some type of contusions and things on his arm and a partially dislocated shoulder. And I've had in the middle of a absolutely life and death situation a dislocated shoulder, this left arm. It was totally taken out. Been there. What do you think of Stephen's mother's talking about the prominent person in the community? And yes, I always wondered how come the prosecutor kept saying, "Are you prominent? You prominent?" At that time, I didn't know about the Smith case, and then once I learned uh, of what the mother stated about Stephen dating a prominent, it does appear that and Alex would never ever allow that term be used because he denied it so much on the stand. Mr. T, where is Stephen's phones? Asked Lisa. Um, Hopefully, it's still in law enforcement's hands. Hopefully. Hey, bad coffee and a chair throwing fight. Do they need search warrants to ask questions? No. You can always, we call them knock and talks. And even during a knock and talk, you can get a consent to search. And I've done numerous consent to search, but you can always talk to anybody. And of course, if they tell you to leave or cuss you out, you just pretty well just turn around and leave. Thank you, Jill. That's very kind of you. Triple S, you like the top rooster in the Waffle House? Yep, pretty much so. Oh, look here. Jill, thank you. Super sticker. Appreciate your support. I'm so far behind, guys. Uh, Kamala Nar says, ain't nothing going to get Georgia red clay out of your clothes. It is. Until you've been stuck in Georgia red clay. Hmm. Um, uh, I don't know if did Stephen have any flashlight on that night, as it would have been pitch black. So maybe he did not know he's crossing a road and did not see a vehicle coming at him with dim headlights. I don't know. You know, I fish a lot at night, and even on the darkest of night, once you get your night vision, it's, you know, there's always some ambient light somewhere. Oh, Dave, you know Mrs. Steve. We send Mrs. Steve in with Steve to the Waffle House just in case things get out of hand. You know her well. Yes, Steve, and you're exactly right, Jill. If it wasn't for Sandy Smith, this case would be nowhere right now. We wouldn't be anywhere near it. It would have the case would have never been brought to the forefront, even with the Murdoch um, conviction. It wouldn't be noted. But thankfully for her, and that's the sad part about it, that she had a state agency with all the officers supporting her from this agency, agreeing with her, and still her pleas fell upon deaf ears. Shouldn't be the case. So cause of death can be changed based on a reevaluation of situational parameters of the crime scene, even if no medical reason is presented. It probably still hasn't been changed yet on the um, um, coroner's uh, and on the death certificate. I don't know at what point they will change it. The changing of the homicide term that is used with SLED could just be an in-house thing. But whatever the cause of death on the death certificate may not be changed yet. And uh, will it be at some point? I would imagine so. Yes, Jeff. Um, I heard that actually. I, as far as being the prominent person, whenever they were asking him in court, um, I didn't get to watch a lot of the court, but I did have the pleasure of watching that interaction. Yes, it can be dislocated by dragging or carrying by arm. And I still, after rehab is the only thing, but for years before I went to rehab, I didn't go for a long time. Um, if I raised my arm sometime or was riding down the road and had my arm elevated, it would just pop out. There's nothing fun about a dislocated shoulder. And Lane, you're right. Prominent does make you think of a older individual. It does me also. Trying to get caught up, guys. And Lisa, that's a good point um, um, about using the flashlight on his phone. And that is one of the great things that these phones have the abilities to do. And I hope, like I said, I got to do some testing today, and hopefully it will work out. I don't see why it wouldn't, because when I saw it, I said, okay, I know what did that. And if that is the case, like I said, I just have to verify, and it's very simple. But I'm looking at hopefully getting some good pictures of it. And Jeff, I'm like you. I don't know what the new evidence could be. Uh, did they find some paint? Um, or a bat or a tool or a pitcher or some notation or note. What could it be? I have no idea right now. And, but anyway, I'm sure I missed a bunch of questions and comments through there, and or maybe not. But I appreciate everybody being here. Has anyone else got any questions? I got caught up, guys. So the ones that we got 118 or so people here tonight. Thoughts on Keegan's change of plea tomorrow? That will be interesting. And then what happens afterwards? There's a lot of coincidences and what will happen in the coming days. Will Keegan, when will he walk, and what will be the sentencing? Nothing will ever, fulfill my desire that he serve the rest of his life in jail. They just won't do that to him. I wish they would, because he's a predator. And he can deny that he never did anything, but it's through his desires that and his participation in seeking that information on the dark web that victimize other children. And so he can plead whatever innocence, but there will never be enough time for him to serve that I believe that would bring justice for those kids. There's no justice that will ever. What happened to the kids through the viewings of what he was watching, those children being abused by these predators, and then people watching them being abused by these predators. Absolutely disgusting. And I would love to discuss it with him personally at some point in the future. And who knows? I may, I'm up in that part of the country sometimes. Maybe he'll give me a call. Steve, what are the chances Stephen's lawyers will have to fight this? I don't think there's going to be much. Pretty much from the statement that was made by SLED that they said that actually you don't even have to exhume the body. We agree that it is a homicide. And the attorney responded appropriately, saying, yes, I think we do still need to make sure it's a non-biased autopsy. Are there internal investigations procedures when lost tips are uncovered to determine what went wrong and how communications could be improved? I'm sure they'll look at it, and and always there's room for improvement. It doesn't matter any type of case, and as you look at all these tips, because whenever you're working these cases early on, time and time again, I tell you, it's chaos. And it is, because you've got everyone in the world trying to help the case, not just law enforcement, but the community. And so you're getting just information from every angle that you can imagine. And things do get confused and get lost. And, the bigger the crime, the more everyone wants to help, and the more information that comes in. And things happen in those. And what is the final answer? I just love a big old board where all the information goes on, and you pull strings from here to there, because you can get too reliant on some of these search engines. And there's nothing wrong with technology. It's no better than whatever you put in there. And if you key the wrong thing, it might miss that there was a man on the bridge dressed up that says, hey, I was there that day, and they missed it for whatever reason. The dates of the charges are curious relative to Delphi, so I think more and more is not involved in the Delphi homicides. It could be just a coincidence, but don't know. Dave has changed over to the Cracker Barrel. Does Stephen live at mom or dad's house? His body location was a few miles from dad's house. Anyone know? I think his sister's house was there, also relatively close. And I think someone mentioned that it was closer to his sister's than his dad's. And but the placement of the body, we don't know which location he was headed to, because where he was placed at could have been totally at random by someone who knew him and put the Stephen's body there for whatever purpose, which could have been simply that I'm gonna place him in the middle of the road, and hopefully another car comes by, strikes him, and covers up my crime. You know, because that's the way some of these people think, that they'll commit a crime and they'll use either water to cover up the crime, or vehicles or trains. There's a lot of ways that people try to conceal their crimes by having secondary injuries occur to the human body. And but there's ways to tell um, if that, when those secondary injuries occur, was it from someone that was already deceased or not. I hope we do get a maximum, but even the maximum sentence, he'll be out before he's deceased. Yes. Later than that, I was going through and I saw where there was some issues about that internal investigation, and what is it going to be, and what possibly influence will it have on the case. Um, I don't know. It could be any type of internal investigations, and the prosecutors just trying to get ahead of the case and say, "Hey, this is what's happening." And then, of course, anytime you release information, it's going to be across the spectrum. Oh, that this is absolutely going to overturn or not, I don't know yet. I'll have to wait and see what the internal is. If it's any type of evidence tampering, absolutely, it will turn it over. But if it's not, I mean, it could be anything. Um, Steve, can you sing happy birthday to Reed, my son? Happy birthday, Reed. Good to see you. My voice is terrible. Mrs. Steve has a great voice. Me, I have none. But happy birthday to you. How old are you, Reed? I have not the first note of any type of singing voice. Um, Sean says, "Sorry, folks, just got on watching from our videos because Stephen had been a victim of a serial offender." Um, there's always that possibility if he was on any of the dating apps of some type of offender, possibly introducing or crossing paths with. The victimology would look at that, and they will look at that at some point. Mr. Steve, if someone did place Stephen on the road, would it be possible his clothing still have DNA on it? Absolutely. There could always be some type of cross contamination of that environment, and even touch DNA. And hopefully, science has reached that far. And if they look at the right areas, they may be able to find something. Um, I'll I'll get Mrs. Steve to sing, or I ask her if she'll sing "Happy Birthday" tonight. Remind me later tonight. Let's see if I can get this thing back to working. There we go. Um, Kathy says, "Steve, I heard Richard Allen gave a statement to a park ranger, not law enforcement. Not sure if true, um, uh, but that's maybe why it got lost." Um, and I don't know. They say um, that it was some type of non-full law enforcement officer out there, the ranger or whatever they call them out there. Here in the state of Georgia, our Department of Natural Resource officers, who are the equivalent of rangers, are fully sworn law enforcement officers in the state of Georgia. So I don't know in the Indiana what they are. Thank you, Mindy, for singing him happy birthday. I'm like I said, I just don't have uh, a, a lick of a tone in me. Stephanie, oh my goodness, that is a crazy dream that he had his eyebrows were shaved his eyebrows. Mm-mm-mm. All right. Well, guys, we've been here going on an hour and a half. I appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate your support and donations. We'll use those for going over to South Carolina. And if the only change in the showing will probably be anything that's affected on Sunday, because I'll have our regular show tonight, be on at 8 tonight. And then I'll have probably a shorter show Saturday night because I'll have to get packed and get what sleep I can before I go on the road, because I'll have a long day in the Carolinas, because whenever I go, I try to schedule everything out, use as much daylight as I can. But I just want to let everybody know that our Sunday members only show I have at 7, I know that won't happen if I get over there. And the morning watch probably won't either, because if I put in a good 12, 15, 18-hour day, I'll be tired. And but anyway, y'all stay safe out there. Appreciate y'all being here. And I'll see y'all in a few hours, and hopefully my tests go well today. Night.